This influencer is being slammed.
The entrepreneur influencer has caused a huge backlash for sneaking into the Brooklyn Half Marathon and then posting about it on social media.
I just ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon.
Hopes that she'll be left alone and that people will stop kind of like scouring through her entire kind of like social media.
Hi. Okay, so I really contemplated whether or not I should even talk about what happened on April 28th for a lot of reasons. But I decided to take it upon myself and thought it was incredibly important for me to not only clear the air and share my story, but also because what happened should never have happened, and it continues to happen. And so I think there is a lot of takeaways from this episode that I hope those of you who are new to following me take away with it. And also, if you've been following me, this is a reality check for all of you aspiring influencers and content creators and TikTokers. So I have 3 things I want to say before I get into this episode. So if you really want to get to the meat of this, fast forward to probably minute 3, 4, 5. But the first thing I want to start off by saying is if you're triggered by the talk of suicide, anxiety, depression, please watch this at your own discretion. I talk often on my platforms and have since I started dealing with my own anxiety and depression at about 16. I talk about having these experiences. However, I'm not trained to educate any of you on anything besides my own experiences, but I'm always happy to talk about this if you send me a DM or whatnot. Second of all, I take full responsibility for what happened on April 28th. I made a mistake that I made with no intention of offending or harming anyone. Absolutely not offending and or harming myself or my career. I made a mistake, as all people do in their lives, and unfortunately my mistake played out in a very negative way. That being said, prior to that date, I had never heard of a term banditing. I had no idea how not only tight-knit the running community is, but how incredible these athletes in that community are and how seriously they take that sport. And I had no intention of this happening, because otherwise I would never have put that tweet out that was supposed to inspire people and help people. And for the first 2 hours, it did. And the responses I got were thousands of incredible messages from people saying they were inspired until it turned. And it wasn't until the following day that I was aware of what had happened and the damage that I had done and how this was being played out in the world without my knowledge. And so for that, I, again, apologize. I made a mistake. I took responsibility for my mistake. I donated to the charity. And unfortunately, what has transpired since that mistake is unacceptable. And because of that, that's why I felt I needed to sit down and not only clear the error, but make it abundantly clear the society and the world we're living in, that this experience has been traumatic for me and shows a lot about the world of social media and the dark reality behind the internet and the media. This is a warning for those of you who want to pursue not only entrepreneurship, but have dreams of being TikTokers and influencers and content creators. If you watch any of my other content, I have talked time and time again about why I say not to label yourself an influencer, not to call yourself a content creator. I take 100% pride in my journey as an entrepreneur. I have done multiple businesses, some that have worked, some that haven't. I have many ideas on the daily, and I have always said that I don't think young people should go and apply to jobs and ever say they're something like an influencer or a personal brand, because this story proves to you why there is a serious reason behind me saying that, and I didn't even have to be canceled for me to be saying that. I always knew that there was a reason you should never call yourself that term, and I stand by that, and I hope this episode proves that. So, I guess to get into it, I want to explain how this happened and what has happened since this incident. But I first want to show some photos on the screen, and I'm going to say and show these photos out loud, but I really want you to ask yourself if you would ever say this to someone who you walk by on the street, your friend, your family member, someone you see online. I'm going to start with the first one. No one cares about your opinion. It's kind of simple. The issue is you narcissistically felt entitled to gate crash an event for charity because you were feeling down about having lost your fucked up life and screwed up in your fucked up business. You know this, but you tried to make the running community look like they felt hurt. That's deflection, and you're a fucking narcissist. You're an embarrassment. I don't know you at all, but I just wanted to say you're a dumb see you next Tuesday. Are we still using that word? That's great. You should run until you die. Your boyfriend left you. You lost your business. You might as well lose your life. Now I'm going to put on the screen some of the photos of profiles of the people who said these things, just to show you that these are faceless people, right? They are not all celebrities or entrepreneurs or anything in that realm necessarily, but they're still people. Another one, you're ugly inside and out. You also cut a race to avoid paying a charity, and therefore I hope your mental health declines and you potentially die. You got the attention you so desperately wanted. Might be tough to swing as a life coach, teaching women to be fearless, but at this point, just scrap the apology and lean into the villain arc. Should I keep going? You're a piece of garbage human being. Awesome to watch this loser's life fall apart in front of us. How many of these vapid, basic white girl coaches / influencers with a dumb, fearless catchphrase are out there? This is what you become when you have no skills, don't want to work, and have no connection to the real world. You deserve the comments you've gotten because you're a bad person. I hope you die. Like, the point of this episode is not for me to sit down and have anyone feel bad for me because I made a mistake and I'm transparent with it. But the bullying and harassment following that mistake make me think we're living in a world where you cannot make a mistake and recover from it. And that's a world that I'm really scared to live in. So let me walk you through what happened in this situation. On April 27th, I hosted a Be Fearless Summit. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's my startup that I've been working on for years. I have tried to make it work, and it's this incredible, beautiful community. Also, shout out to Heidi, who is one of the Fearless members. I don't know if you guys can see this, but she just sent me this Fearless bracelet. She also started a company called T-Jams. But I started this in 2018. I started a blog when I was 12. I'm from a very small town in eastern Connecticut, grew up with no money, no connections. My father was unfortunately wrongfully convicted and put in prison when I was 7, and the year that he got out is the year that I started my blog. So no, I am not a vapid white influencer trust fund kid from Greenwich, Connecticut. I am, quite frankly, the opposite. And that is why I decided that I needed to take a stand and say something, because I have worked my damn ass off to get to this point in my career, and for it to all be wiped away because of something like this, something that I fixed and something that did not have to take on this life of its own, made me really realize a lot about the internet. A few months ago, a friend of mine who knew I was hosting this event reached out and said, "You should run the Brooklyn Half Marathon with me." And I said, absolutely not. It's the day after I am running like with a chicken with my head cut off to host this Be Fearless event. There's no way I can run 13 miles. I haven't trained. Absolutely not happening. So he asked me to run with him, and I said I didn't think there was any way I could do it. I hadn't trained. I run in my regular life. I like to compare myself on a personal level to Tina Fey in Mean Girls when she says, I'm a pusher. That is my character. I am a pusher. I push myself mentally, physically, in my business and in my personal life, which explains why I have very high highs and very low lows. But I think that is kind of the best way for me to explain myself. I push myself. So I would not say I'm anywhere near an athlete, but I train sometimes like an athlete in the gym or with my trainer or with my running that I like to do as a hobby or at Run Club. And so I hosted this incredible event on April 27th, and I was brimming with adrenaline. It's like, kind of getting a Christmas present when you're an entrepreneur and you realize that maybe your idea works, right? I had this awesome event and I felt like I was just on top of the world. So I went out with some friends that night and we had some wine, and then the next morning I woke up still on this high from what had happened the day before in my career, and it was just awesome. And so my friend was like, I'm headed to Brooklyn if you want to come. I mean, this was like 6 a.m. I barely even slept. I mean, adrenaline's pumping through my veins. And he was like, I'm heading to Brooklyn. This is where it starts and this is where it ends if you want to come run with me. And I was like, there's no way right now I can meet you in Brooklyn, but like, let me see if I can muster up any energy to just go and run, right? Just wanted to run. It felt like a good thing to do to push myself to see if I could do it. Knowing quite well there was no way I was going to be able to run 13 miles. There was no way I was going to finish. I had no intention necessarily of doing it. I just wanted to push myself. They block off basically all the streets for these marathons. And so there was a security guard, and I just said very casually, like, hey, where's this start and where does this end? And he was like, oh, here it starts, here it ends. This is where they run through, blah, blah. And I was like, cool. So I just said to my friend, let me get out. I'm going to, start running. And so I walked very far, quite frankly, away from actually where it started, and because it's barricaded. And like I said, I had no intention of trying to enter this race. Like, I was just there to run. There was no personal reason for me to run with the runners. It was more like they gave me a reason to run, so I was running, because otherwise I was like, oh, this is cool to know other people are doing it, so I'm going to do it. And so I just started running. And during the run, I mean, it was just super emotional for me. I mean, I've had a tumultuous year in business. And of course, social media is a highlight reel. So most of you don't necessarily know what's happened, but I have gone through some serious stuff. I had a really serious personal year, highs and lows, and finding myself in all things that people in their 20s do. And so I spent a lot of the run crying. At some point during the run, my running app said you're at a 7:43 pace, and I thought to myself, like, damn, because I felt it. Like, I felt the adrenaline pumping through my body, and it was awesome. And so I ultimately ended up I did not finish the race where everyone finished. I actually finished about 2 miles before. So at mile 11, I decided to stop. Ultimately, I ended up running about 13 miles between where I started and where I ended. But I physically could not run anymore. My body, like, I could feel the insides of my tendons just stretching. Like I said, I didn't train. My intention was not to compete at any pace for this. I just ran. And so I stopped and sat down on stairs somewhere in Brooklyn. I have no idea. Completely cut off from where the race was. And my friend actually texted me and he was like, hey, I just finished. Where are you? Come take a photo. Come see it. And I said, no, I don't have any intention of being where the end is. But I'll see you later. Like, let's get drinks or something tonight. And so that was around 10 a.m. I sat down and I just wrote this tweet. The amount of time it took me to write the tweet was the amount of time it took me to decide to run that morning. And it was just a very fast, tweet. And I thought, if I can put out this message that many of you have seen it, I mean, it was headline news for God knows 8 days, that, maybe someone will just decide to keep running. Because in life, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I have no idea what your next step is. God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I know it looks like I know what I'm doing, and I think I know what I'm doing, but we never know what we're doing. You never know who's going to leave your life, come into your life, what may pop up, who you may be in an elevator with tomorrow. And that, I think, is this incredible thing about life, and is also one of the reasons why I say making mistakes is awesome, is because without the mistakes, you have no idea about the trials and the tribulations and the grit needed to survive in this world, and especially in the business world. So I posted the tweet. I cut very much around from where everyone had like finished. I mean, like I said, I didn't even see where people had finished the race. It was not my interest to see that because I wasn't there to collect any award or anything. So anyway, I go to brunch with my friend. I end up going on my phone maybe around 12 or 1, and the tweet was up to like 50,000 impressions. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And people were messaging me. I posted a video on Instagram. The response at that point was awesome. I mean, it was so kind. And people were like, you know, this made me realize you never stop running in life, and every time you go through things and XYZ. And I was like, that's awesome. I had no idea this tweet would reach 10 million people and almost ruin my career. So that's what happened. And then I went back to the apartment I was at, and I took a bit of a rest. What I did was a spur of the moment, silly thing, right? The same way that if you go outside and you're like, I don't know, I want to buy a dumb bag. Now, around 3 p.m., I went back on my phone and I saw the tweet was up to about like 100 or 200,000 people, which was wild. I mean, I've never had a thing go viral. I talk a lot about why I don't necessarily think you need to go viral to be successful. I've built a business that has legs online and offline, and there's a reason why I don't call myself an influencer. And so I got 2 notifications. I don't really have notifications on my phone for Twitter, but for whatever reason that day, 2 things went off, like ding, ding, back to back. And I wasn't looking at the comments. There was, again, no thought in my mind that anything would go wrong with that tweet. And I really, really want to tell you that, because there was nothing in my mind that thought anything was wrong. Because like I said at the beginning of this episode, I made a mistake, right? But I didn't know. And now I know, but I didn't know then. And in life, you don't have all the answers. And what you know now, you may not have known 30 minutes ago. So I get a response from someone making a comment about people who run the marathons and like the streets being paid for. And I just look at it like, what? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So my reply was, life's not fair. And I'm like laughing as I'm walking down the street thinking, why is this woman trying to ruin my day? I posted such an inspirational tweet. Little did I know, had I looked then, that the tides had very fastly turned and it went from 0 to 100 within seconds. But I wasn't looking at the comments. Like, I was just busy moving on with my day, blah, blah. That next minute, I get another message, you know, someone saying something about stealing. And I think to myself, what? Stealing? And I, in the spur of the moment, replied and said, you know, talk to me about stealing. A few weeks ago, and this is true, I had a client who I signed for my consulting business who I feel like scammed me out of a lot of money. And it was stupid because I didn't have them sign a contract, and I gave them all the money back, and I basically worked for free. That being said, I show up to inspire young people every day. I do a lot of unpaid speaking gigs. I host Be Fearless events where I still have yet to make a profit. That's my thing. You know, that's my problem, right? And that's sometimes it's give or take, right? When you're running a business, you have to choose to do things in a way pro bono or lose money and do other things to pay your bills while you build something. And some things take longer to build than other things take to build. And so I said, you know, talk to me about stealing. I replied to the tweet, like, my nose is really itching. Okay. I said, talk to me about stealing. I just got scammed out of this and I have to work my ass off. And, you know, you're taken away from this positive tweet. Few hours go by and, you know, it's just blowing up in the way that, again, I'm not looking at the comments. So all I was looking at was that little number bar that you see on Twitter, you know, the impressions. And so it was like 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000. By the end of the evening on the 20th, I think it was maybe 1 million. And I just thought, this is awesome. You know, I had thousands of people at the beginning saying you're so inspiring. And so there was, again, no point in my mind that thought anything was wrong. And so that explains those 2 messages. I thought people were trying to ruin my day, and I did not realize that I had apparently ruined theirs because I was completely blissfully unaware of the mistake and what would transpire next. So the next day I'm walking down the street, and I did wake up and I checked the tweet, and I saw there was maybe like, I think at that point 4 or 5 million impressions. And I had a lot of new followers, and I just kept thinking, like, wow, this is just so cool. I mean, I called my mom. I was like, hey, I had this thread that was really inspiring. I sent it to my mom. People had seen it. No one in my inner circle or friends reached out and was like, hey, are you seeing this? Hey, do you see the comments? So again, like, I'm just going through my day. I'm heading to a podcast, and I get a email notification on my phone from the New York Post. And there's a reporter who says, I would like to interview you about the severe and serious backlash you're receiving about your banditing experience on Twitter. Can I call you? And in a way, when you work in media, and I mean, I've been in this world for so long, so I know, number one, the New York Post is slander. So there was, of course, I'm thinking in my mind, like, in a way, your stomach sinks. I'm like, oh my God. And the first thing that goes through my mind is like, you've been canceled. I have no idea why I've been canceled. Like, something's happened. So I go on Twitter, and now the tweet's at 6 million people. And I start looking at the comments. And I was in shock. I mean, I stopped dead. I was late to this podcast interview that I was doing. I stopped dead in the middle of the street in the West Village. And I just was like, oh my God, what the fuck is happening? I went to my DMs and I was flooded with messages. I went to Instagram and TikTok to see, because I know sometimes if things don't move over, and I've never had an experience like this happen before, but sometimes it'll stay on one platform. And that was my thought. This is going to stay on Twitter and die down. And that's it. And I went to Instagram and I was getting flooded with messages. I was getting comments on all of my stuff. And I was a bit nervous because I'm thinking like, oh man. And I mean, I'm a one-woman show, right? Like, I'm a 26-year-old self-made entrepreneur working my ass off, hustling away, have been for years. And I'm just thinking, I'm freaking out mentally because I don't know what to do. So I replied to the Post journalist, Tracy, and I said, send me your questions. And I'm hoping that she sends me them in a way where they're positive questions. And she sent me them and said, can you answer these? And I just did a quick look. And I said, absolutely not, because I knew where this was going. So the interview, or this piece, comes out around 3 p.m. And I'm like, all right. And I sent it to my, I have a publicist on and off, but not. And she pretty much called me immediately and was like, this is really bad. So then I did read it and I was like, oh God, like, this is really bad. And of course the headline's like, influencer received backlash. It's photos of this and that. And I'm like, oh gosh. But again, I ran a race. I did, I guess, bandit. At the time, I had no idea and had never heard of that word and had no intention of hurting anyone. And I apologized, gave the money to the charity. The charity actually reached out to me before and even said, like, we're so sorry, we're seeing what's happening to you. And I was like, thanks. And so I'm thinking, like, this is going to die down today. Lo and behold, I wake up on Tuesday and it was just a media shitstorm. CBS News, the Daily Mail, The Sun. People were reacting to everything I was doing, thousands of comments on Reddit. And I was getting messages from people I knew and haven't spoken to. I was getting messages from guys I know. I was getting messages from people in England. I was getting messages from all of my friends just saying, like, are you okay? We've seen the news. This article from the New York Post snowballed into what I've experienced in the past 3 weeks, which is severe bullying and harassment, and was one of the main reasons I needed to take 17 days off, was because I was actually scared for my life. And it wasn't and hasn't just been the messages and the responses. I started getting messages on Twitter with my social media and email passwords and bank account passwords that are encrypted on my phone. I started getting tons of phone calls to my work phone that I don't even have that number out there. I received thousands of people telling me to die. I noticed that journalists were actually posting that I should cut my legs off on Twitter. And of course, everyone in my inner circle and my friends and my parents are like, ignore them. What people say online doesn't matter. But everyone cares what people think. And I've been in this world and I've worked hard enough to know that, and I've seen cancel culture, not really in this kind of capacity, but I've seen it well and hard before to where I know what happens in these kind of scenarios. And so I had to delete every app off my phone. I started getting guys saying that they were going to come and literally sexually assault me. I had one in particular that said he would literally, oh my God, I'm not even going to, I can't even say it out loud. It was awful. And I'm living alone. I am doing my own thing. And that was really scary. People started reaching out to my parents. The comments on Reddit were so bad I had to delete my Reddit account. I deleted every app off of my phone. The phone calls were so scary. I mean, it just makes you shake. So it's one thing to say to someone like, hey, ignore it, which of course, had it been 100 or 200 people, no problem. But I had 10 million people telling me to die, to cut my legs off, sending me messages with my passwords in it, conversations going on about me that I had no participation in. I have seen people saying I'm British and used being British to lie, and I think it's because my LinkedIn says I'm British. In 25 articles I read about myself, I didn't give any comment to any of them besides one that my publicist wrote for me. Now, my first apology that I posted on Twitter was literally I was watching myself be canceled in real time every time I would refresh my phone. And so the first thing, because I'm just thinking there's no way this is gonna become as severe as it became. And so I issued, I said an apology, and it just would not stop. The bullying and the harassment, and I think the journalists who played into this. And I think the craziest thing to me is I've gone through, and I'm still getting death threats. It's 18 days now since April 29th, I think. I'm still getting hundreds of messages a day. I am still getting people replying to people who have tagged me in awesome Be Fearless Summit posts about how terrible of a person I am and how we should cancel this woman again. And the fact that I made a mistake, posted that on social media, fixed it, what should have fixed it, and yet I am being bullied and harassed to this degree where I was scared for my life, where I did not get out of bed for a week, where I had to fly my mom to London to make sure I literally didn't kill myself, is unacceptable. And I have no idea who's watching this and needs to hear it, but you better be damn careful who you send your messages to online and who you think you know on the internet. Because let me tell you, if I didn't have the therapist that I currently have and my parents and my friends to really help me get through this, I 100% would have killed myself. And it is impossible to sit here and say that I am fine with thousands of death threats, with men saying they're going to show up, with people calling me, with people sending me my passwords, with people tweeting about me with articles. No, there is no way that that is okay. Are we really living in a society right now where a young person, or anyone, quite frankly, cannot make a mistake, fix the mistake to their best ability, and then it is okay on the other side, following his or her mistake, to then say, you should die? You should never, ever tell someone that they should die. It is really sad to me that I think I was used to prove some type of a point in the media. I think the current culture surrounding influencers is a raunchy one, and that's why I call myself an entrepreneur, because I don't want to be compared to people who have not worked as hard as I've worked to get famous online, or people who have gotten famous online for doing very little. When I talk about my struggles and I sit there and I call people and I get myself rejected to help you, right? To help young people, because that's what I was needed. That's what I needed when I was growing up. And I do that for free, right? I do that because I genuinely take so much pride in knowing that one person may see that video or that tweet and change their life. I don't take any responsibility for the backlash and the bullying or the harassment, nor do I think I deserved it, nor does anyone deserve any of what I'm still going through at this point, because you would never say that to someone on the street. You would never send that message to somebody who you knew would be able to trace it back to you. The journalists who tweeted this, and one in particular who said, let's all find her and cut her legs off. And that journalist in particular was and is a co-founder of a pretty big media company. I don't want anyone to think that is okay, right? Like, I am telling you, I made a mistake, and I think it's awesome to make mistakes, and you learn from the mistakes, and there's a proper way to learn. This is the next level. This is no longer learning. This is full on abusing the internet and the power that people think they can use behind a screen. Because if you go and you get a job interview or that woman's publication shuts down and someone sees that tweet, let me tell you, she may not get another journalism gig because of that. I actually could sue her because of that tweet. But yet, it is me that needs to deal with the death threats and the harassment and the bullying and her tweets that are celebrated. How is that okay? It is not okay. It is unacceptable behavior. And anytime you see something and you want to participate in a conversation over social media and think that you can hide behind your screen, let me tell you, you will get what you deserve and what is coming for you, especially if you are the person who ever tells someone to kill themselves or who ever tells someone or encourages somebody else to kill said person. Because you have one life, and many people are a lot more fragile than you think they are. The problem with the internet is that we allow this behavior. Of course, everyone wants to jump on a bandwagon. Of course, everyone wants to see a pretty little white girl who says she's from Connecticut die. We hate influencers. We hate them so much because we want to be them, because we are desperate to get notoriety for anything at this point. And this kind of example is almost showing these younger generations that this is okay until it's not. But my question for so many people is like, what happens when we get to this point, right? Where you can no longer make a mistake and bounce back from it. Where my career, my name, my mental health had to be so severely impacted by what other people said about me, because everyone wanted to see my demise. And the media that picked this up, I have no idea why. I mean, everything from CBS News to New York One to the Daily Mail to the Sun, making these observations about me and really attacking everything that I've done in 10 years, which is so sad because I just would never do that to someone. I think you have to be a really low and lost person to bully someone. And I think if you were bullied as a kid, and I was bullied in middle school, I was bullied in high school, you know, bullies hurt people, right? So if you're bullying someone, it's because you're hurting. That being said, the research that I've done in the past few weeks actually illustrates that most people who do bully people online are people who are in pretty high powered positions, like doctors and nurses, secretaries. I'm not quite sure why that is, but there's a lot of research out there that says that. And I have many screenshots on my phone of course, many of the people who send me these messages. Many of them are men. Many of them are also the woman too, right? And their profiles, some of them are very high-powered people in media who played into this. Some of them are people with 0 followers. Most of them are people with very little following or kind of what look like bot accounts. But I don't care whether you're fucking Meghan Markle or Piers Morgan or you're an account with 0 followers. Don't ever tell someone to kill themselves. We're living in a world right now where you have to be so careful with everything you say, because God forbid you make a mistake. There may be a place and a time where you cannot bounce back for it. And I almost lost everything because of one sentence in this tweet that I had no idea was so wrong. And now I know. But this experience almost cost me my life. That mistake almost cost me my life. How is that okay? It's not. It's not okay. Like, bullying is not okay. Harassment is not okay. And it sucks that it's still going on. I mean, I have so many DMs and messages I can't even open. I mean, even going back and posting something last week was so scary. I'm almost not even on social media again right now because I'm just scared. And the comments, they won't stop. I'm telling you, this happened 18 days ago and I'm still getting them. And it's just crazy to me how this blew up into something so big and how so many people are allowed to tell me to cut my throat instead of just being like, hey, you made a mistake. You know, thank you for donating to the charity and don't do it again. And anyone who watches this, you know, the biggest takeaway I want you to have from this is that make mistakes. I think they are incredible. I think they make you fearless. I may be the only person who is willing to sit here and say that the mistakes I've made have gotten me to where I am, but the mistakes I've made have gotten me to where I am. So that guy you've been dating for 3 years who you just woke up and realized sucks, or the friend you've been in a friendship with who you just realized isn't giving you anything as a friend, who you need to cut out of your life, or that family member who just isn't a good person anymore that you regret keeping in your life for so long, anything like that. The job interview you screwed up. I cannot tell you what's going to happen to you tomorrow or the next day or who you're going to meet. But the one thing that I know is that the more mistakes you can make, the more grit and resilience you have. And not all mistakes can be fixed. And I believe I have done my best to fix this mistake. But some things come at a cost. And I will reiterate what I said at the beginning of this episode. There is a reason why I say do not call yourself an influencer or a TikToker or a content creator. Do not show up to job interviews saying that is the kind of industry you're looking to pursue or career you want to be labeled as, because had I not been in the position that I'm in with any following on social media, there's no way that this would have happened or spiraled. But everyone loves to see an influencer get their neck cut in half. I have no idea why, but everyone wants to see this. And for the past 18 days, that has been everyone's mission, it seems. But it's super sad because I love what I do and I really take so much pride in my job and helping young women and people. And I love business and I love tech, and so much of what I do is not influencing. It's very much behind the scenes and working with startups. I don't deserve to be told to die because of the mistake that I made. And neither do you if you've made those mistakes. Perhaps they've been in the public, or maybe they've just been behind the scenes in your personal life. But I want to applaud you for making mistakes and rebounding from them. That's what I've had to do. This is how I make a living, and I'm not willing to let 10 million people, who half of them decided to tell me to die and the other half applauded me for that tweet, either way, ruin my life and the career I've worked so hard for. Because I think if I were to just let this die down without saying anything, it would show that not only is cancel culture okay, but that young people cannot make mistakes. And I live in the opposite mindset, that you can't control what's going to happen, but it is how you rebound from it. It is how you stand up for what you believe in, and it is how you really speak your truth that matters in the future. And if we could applaud more of that instead of not only staying in the past, but also thinking that this kind of bullying and harassment is ever okay, then I think we could get to a society that's a lot better and stronger than the one we're living in now. Because I can tell you, for a period of time here, I really thought to myself, not only am I over, but I don't know that I want to do this anymore. They say that all press is good press, but, you know, one death threat that turned into like close to 2,000, I don't want that kind of press. Like, that's not what I want to be known for, because I take so much pride in the work that I do. And so that's just a huge takeaway, I think, for anyone from this, is to not only be okay with making mistakes, like I made that mistake and I took ownership for it, but second of all, do not ever show up. I urge you, please don't show up to job interviews or be eager to be an influencer or TikToker or content creator without some meaning behind whatever it is you're trying to do. Because this entire episode and this entire situation of what's happened to me is the reality behind this world that we're living in. And you have to want something more than just the notoriety online for doing nothing. And that is the brand that I've built. And that is the thing that I am the most proud of within myself, is having been able to get to a point where I am strong enough to be able to sit here and tell you this. But the last takeaway is just the bullying and harassment needs to stop. But more importantly, the fact that it got to this point and has become socially acceptable to do this to somebody, and especially do this to somebody young. And I'm not looking for people to sit here and feel bad for me. I'm making you very well aware that you could be next. You could also be the next person to make somebody kill themselves. And that is too serious to not acknowledge. So that's it. I've said my piece. I want this chapter to end. I don't ever want to experience something like this again. I want the death threats, the harassment to stop, and I'm hoping they do, but it's been 18 days and it's still going on. And that's it. That's all I have to say. For those of you who did send me, and I actually have, the only good thing out of this is I've made some connections with really awesome people who reached out and saw the backlash and have said such kind things to me, people who did not need to reach out and say anything. And that is incredible, and is the only thing I think that really got me through this, along with my little fearless girl gang, because I don't think I would have gotten through this on my own. This was too severe and too traumatic, and has really put me mentally in a very tough spot it's still going on. Like, I don't at all feel like I've recovered from this, and I hope that I can, and I will work to be fearless enough, but I don't think I deserved this. And I don't think anyone ever deserves, as a young person, to experience this type of backlash or response or hate and think it's acceptable. But the society we live in, I think we encourage this kind of behavior and we think it's okay. And it's just not okay. It's not okay. So that is all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you did reach out to me and have sent me a kind message, thank you for that. Like I said just a second ago, I don't think without a lot of those messages from people who saw the way that this was twisted and made me out to be this terrible, terrible young adult, I don't think I would have been able to get through this. So thank you for that. And I think it shows a lot to stand up to other people and reach out to someone who you don't know behind a screen and tell them that you see what they've gone through and what they're going through, and that you are kind of in their corner if they need. And I think that's a really awesome thing to do, because if you really look and take a look at what some people have said to me because of this and the messages that I've gotten, and obviously many of them are in my DMs, so many of you can't even see them unless you're viewing them on the screen or go on Twitter. But if you are someone who reaches out to somebody and tells them they're going to be okay, you just never have any idea how that can impact someone. And so, yeah. So like I said, this is really the last I want to talk about this. I am writing a book, and I have to think this happened for a reason. I think that's the only way I can think about life, is that everything happens for a reason. Everything has to make you stronger. Everything has to make you more fearless. But I didn't want this to happen. I hope it never happens again. And I just won't put up with this behavior, and I won't encourage anyone to ever put themselves in a position to allow themselves to have this happen. But you also never know. And that's the reality of the internet and the world we live in, that you never know what's going to happen. You never know how someone's going to perceive something. You never know what the media potentially may do to you. And it's up to you to decide at that point, what direction do you want to move forward in? Do you, in a way, want to let people who are bullying and abusing your mental health win? Or do you want to do everything you can in your power to turn this into something that you have to think teaches you a lesson, but also helps you gain a little bit more grit and resilience? So back to normal on Wednesday with a new episode of The New Unfiltered. Thank you all for tuning in, and please stay fearless or die trying. And I think let's cancel culture. I'm sick of this shit. I think some people deserve to be canceled. I think a lot of others don't. And I am so fucking sick of cancel culture. So That's it.